Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris here with you for another week. It is the first Monday of February 2022, and that means Request Week here at the Metal Exchange. Falconer's debut album, going all the way back in time to 2001, over 20 years ago now. But before we get there, Chris, how are you, my man?
Very good, very good. This was, I think this one was a long time coming. I know our friend Justin had requested this a while ago, months ago. So I'm glad we were finally able to get to it.
Yeah, we've actually had a number of requests for Falconer, which is a little bit surprising because I never put them up in the highest echelon of power metal bands or anything like that. They and by that I mean, you know, I think Halloween, I think Blind Guardian. I never really put Falconer in the same category in terms of widespread popularity. But at the same time, we've had multiple requests for this band and obviously this album in particular. We'll read a quote from Justin and why he picked this album in a little bit. But before we get there, really, really interesting week for new releases, specifically on the singles front. Conception releases a new single in Monument in Time. A little bit lighter material. It makes me wonder if the days of Parallel Minds are over, because they seem to be really just taking flow to the next level with all their newest material. But I thought the song itself was pretty good, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the album.
I haven't gotten a chance to listen to it yet, but it looks like they are like later this year re-releasing their latest album with like a whole bunch of bonus tracks that I think they've been kind of trickling out as singles. There's a couple of live, like older songs that are done live, and this is a new track that will be included in that box set. So I've just been kind of collecting the singles as they come, and I assume that I'm assuming they're all going to be included in that box when it comes out. But yeah, I haven't had a chance to listen to the song yet, but I look forward to hearing it. Anytime you get a chance to hear Roy Khan sing is a good thing.
And he sounds fantastic on this track. It was like going back in time or something like that. He really sounded fantastic.
I can't wait to see him live for the first time. I mean, I still have never seen him perform live, and so the hope is that if all goes well and Conception can get to Prague Power this year, that I will finally get to cross that one off the old bucket list.
I am toying with the idea of going to Norway next month to see them at a club show in their hometown. I don't think it's going to happen, but the invitation is out there, and I know I will be kicking myself if I miss that one. But yeah, I saw them back in 2006, and they did not disappoint. And I've seen Roy sing for Camelot as well, but I am very much looking forward to that Conception set, as well as these two other bands who are both stalwarts on the U.S. touring scene, and two bands that I've really come to like, especially in the last couple of years. German thrashers Creator have released their new single Hate Über Alles. It came out on February 4th. I'll simply say this: if you're a fan of Creator, you're going to like this track. If you have never heard Creator, go listen to it. And if you don't like Creator, and if you don't like Creator, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast, but if you do not like Creator, you're probably not going to like this song, because it is right up there with all their other material, and it's very, very good. And another single which is getting a lot of, I don't want to say negative publicity, but a polarizing single by Arch Enemy called Handshake with Hell, also coming out on February 4th. Clean vocals in an Arch Enemy song. It's not something they've really done. I digged it. I thought this was fantastic. And I also know that I might be in the minority here.
I just think it was so funny that we, in last week's episode, just like I went on that kind of like little Arch Enemy rant at the end of the episode about how they don't utilize Elise's clean vocals. And then sure enough, you know, 5 days later, they release a single. And it's funny, I saw, you know, one of our friends, Anthony DeCresantis, was saying that he goes, "I don't want clean vocals in my Arch Enemy songs," and I'm not a big enough Arch Enemy fan to care one way or the other. And I'm with you. I enjoyed the song quite a bit. In fact, it kind of inspired me to pre-order the album. So
There you go.
that I might not have pre-ordered otherwise. And I just pre-ordered the Creator album because it's time for me to just get on the Creator bandwagon. So
I love it. I love it. And I'll be honest with you, I have had them on my list, right? Like the list of albums that I want to cover on a non-request week. I've had them on there for a year and a half now, right? Since or almost a year and a half since we started this. I don't know why I haven't picked them yet, but I am so curious to hear your thoughts on these German thrash legends. I just I had overlooked them for the longest time, and I'll get into this more when we discuss them in long form, but I had overlooked them for the longest time. And then a couple of albums ago, I finally heard them and I was blown away. And then to go back into their archives with some of their older stuff, they've been doing it for, decades upon decades, and they are just very, very consistent. So we'll talk about them more in long form. But let's get to the reason why we are here. Falconer's debut album, which I cannot believe came out May 8th, 2001. And I guess before we get into it, you want to read Justin's quote and why he wanted us to cover this? I think it's worth mentioning that this is a band that has been around for 20 years, and I think it's safe to say that they sound like no other. They really, in a genre of power metal where there's, kind of that like defining sound, if you will, they broke the mold with this album and would continue to do that for nearly 2 decades.
Yeah, and I think anybody that tried to sound like them didn't come close to repeating the quality that they put forth. But Justin is a friend of ours that we met at Prague Power years back, and he had been attending. I don't know how we never ran into each other prior to that, because there were a few years that we attended at the same time. But him and his wife Verna, we became good friends with, and he would always say, like, we got to get Falconer over here, and I was like, yeah, I just didn't think that. I felt like if Falconer was going to play the U.S. or at Prague Power, it would have happened by then, because they had been around for about 10 years, and I'm sure that it wasn't for Glenn Harveston's lack of trying, but it finally came to pass that they would be playing right before the headliners, Anathema. Forgot exactly the year it was, but as it turned out, Anathema wanted to kind of wrap things up a little bit early, so they flipped positions, and Falconer ended up being the last band on that Friday night, and boy, was that just an unbelievable show, and we'll get into that a bit later, but let me read what Justin had to say, because he had been asking about this, and him and Verna were actually sponsors that year and ended up becoming pretty good friends with some of the members of the band. But what Justin said, for me, I was listening to a compilation of some sort back in early 2001 or 2002, around that time, and can't remember exactly, and I just hear the opening riff to Heresy in Disguise, and I was immediately like, oh, I like that riff. And then as the song played and Matthias's voice comes in, it just blew me away. I immediately went searching for a while before I found a copy of the disc and just loved it. It was so different from everything else, and the amazing riffs and the uniqueness of combination of the singing to me at the time. So I think that kind of is a good framework for what we're going to talk about here. The uniqueness of this album, especially, I think it still sounds unique 20 years later, but 20 years ago, this was like almost like hearing a Rhapsody or a Nightwish for the first time. Like, it was just a whole another world of music. Instead of like having the kind of high pitched power metal vocals a la Michael Kiske or Fabio Leone, or kind of that kind of raspiness of like an Andy Darris, they went with like a stage singer, and boy, does it work here. Matthias Blad's vocals are just so epic, and I know it's probably not for everyone, but I thought that those vocals with the just iconic riffs, there's an iconic riff in almost every song on this album. Though that combination, I think, just really made, I think, people sit up and take notice of this new band from Sweden to just come on the scene like with this album just out of nowhere. And for me, it was the opening track, Upon the Grave of Guilt, that I just heard it and was like, holy crap, like this is something else.
I go back to like the turn of the century and I think about all the young upstart power metal bands that were coming out or had just come out with albums or would soon come out with albums around 2000. Axenstar, Celesty, a lot of those, again, the Twilightnings, these bands like that second wave of European power metal, right? And I think of all these bands and they kind of took what was happening with Labyrinth and Angra and Edguy and these other bands came along and kind of just pushed things to the next level, doing something very, very similar. To your point, the higher pitched vocals, the guitar solos, the whole bit. And it was fantastic. But these guys broke the mold and they were kind of like trendsetters in their own way, I guess, because not a lot of guitar solos and vocals, which just fly in the face of every other band that are in the genre. And they somehow make it work with this riff-based power metal that are a little bit less liberal in how they employ that double bass drum technique, which is so common amongst the power metal bands. And then you mix that with, again, this like classically trained vocalist, and you get this album, which I made a point of stealing on Napster back in 2001 because I remember there was a buzz about this band when this album came out, and it was on, Metal Blade, which is obviously a big label at the time. But poor college student me couldn't afford it. So I went on Napster, I downloaded the album, and I played it for the first time. And I heard Upon the Grave of Guilt, the opening track, and I was floored by that song. And I think I probably played this album more in 2001. I mean, I don't have a record of this, but I think I played this album more in 2001 than I did any other album because I was transfixed. I was smitten by the sound. And in full candor, I loved it. And I just never, for whatever reason, gave the rest of the discography that close of a listen. I may have heard some songs, I may have heard some albums, but it really wasn't until their last effort in 2020, From a Dying Ember, that I kind of paid as much attention as I should have. So this was a great exercise for me. I loved the opening track 20 years ago, and I played the album a lot, and there were certain things that I remembered really well, but by and large, because I just kind of didn't listen to them for a while, I forgot a lot of this album. So it was almost like I was hearing it for the first time again because it had been so long. And I was curious as to whether the songs that I really remembered well from back in the day were going to be the same ones that popped this time. And I got to be honest with you, they didn't. It was a very different experience for me this time around, which I can't always say is the case. But it was interesting, and I'm mad at myself for not digging deeper into this meaty discography that they have. But I will, especially after going back to this album.
Yeah, I think that the change in vocalist after the second album, Chapters from a Vale Forlorn, might have taken some of the momentum of us as listeners away, because I mean, I can't speak for you, but I assume that you agree that you were a big fan of Matthias's vocals. So to see him depart and be replaced by somebody who has a completely different style, nothing against the singer who came in, but I mean, when you have somebody with a uniqueness like Matthias has, and then he's out, it's kind of jarring. And Falconer had only released those two albums. I mean, I didn't really get into this band. I mean, I knew Upon the Grave of Guilt when this album came out, and that was about it for years. It was when the band was announced for Prog Power USA that I was like, I really need to get into this band. And oh my God, did I? I mean, I was telling you earlier this week that year that them and Dragonland were both announced, that I can only assume that it would be both of those bands' US debuts, but I became massive fans of both bands that year leading up to it. And by the time it rolled around and I found out that there were no visa issues and they were there, like they were in Atlanta, I was so amped to see them. And I ended up we all got to see Dragonland play twice, and Falconer completely tore it up. And I think that they were given that headline slot and could kind of do what they wanted with the time. They were able to kind of do a little bit of an acoustic set, which was really cool. And they just, and stealing your word, meaty. It was a meaty set. And I remember standing right around where the soundboard is. My feet were just killing me, but I just couldn't pull myself away because the set was just so good. And watching Justin watch that set and get to see like the band that he sponsored and wanted to see for so long, seeing how happy he was, I was kind of behind him and just watching his reaction, and it made it all the more like amazing just to watch. And so I'm so glad that I decided to like really dig in and become a big fan of the band leading into it, because it made it such a more memorable experience.
And that would be their final live performance as well. So it was kind of a real send-off, especially for longtime fans of the band, that they would actually have a chance to see this show that was billed as their final live performance. And it was, it was something to remember. There are a number of clips on YouTube that are out there. So if you're kind of curious as to what show we're talking about, just type in Falconer and Prog Power on YouTube, and I think you'll find quite a few videos out there. But yeah, I took this album off the internet in 2001. I played the heck out of it. And then here we are over 20 years later going back to it. And, we'll just get right into it. Again, that opening track, Upon the Grave of Guilt, it starts with this really brief drum solo, and then it hits with that riff, which this is what this band is. This is not solos. This is not like wild instrumental sections that you hear in certain bands like a Halloween or something like that. This is riffage, fast, catchy riffs, and vocals that I would put up against absolutely anyone, just because they are flawless. They are flawless on the album, and they are flawless live. And that is what makes them, so special. This, Once Matthias's vocals kick in on this opening track, you realize that this is a different band from just about everything else, and just like a breath of fresh air.
Well said. I agree completely. I would be more interested in seeing Broadway shows if they got Matthias, whatever, to do like some shows in the U.S., some Broadway shows. I'd go see Hamilton. I'd be a lot more likely to see Hamilton if he was in it. I just think it's such an interesting choice. Like just going for something totally different. And I agree with you about just the guitar work. It's such a guitar driven band. And Stefan, who wrote all the songs on this album, I mean, it's pretty clear that the guitarist had something to do with the songwriting here, because these are all very guitar-led songs, but almost every song opens up with a very memorable guitar riff. And like you said, Upon the Grave of Guilt is no exception to that rule. But just the way that the song, like you said, it has that kind of that brief little drum intro, and then it just shoots out. And like, for me then 20 years ago and now, like when a song starts out with this much energy and this much speed, you have me hooked right away. And we haven't even heard the vocals yet. And then like, there's a part where he just, where it just kind of slows down and he does like this. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not a vocal teacher or whatever. But just what he does with his voice,
where the rest of the instruments drop out and it's just him singing this. I don't want to say falsetto because it's not that, but he uses the voice as an instrument, but somehow enunciates each word much better than I'm doing right now.
Whoa!
That was actually quite good. I'm very impressed.
I'm gonna tell you something that I noticed. I was listening to this album in my car earlier, and you know what the difference between listening to Falconer for me and listening to like almost any other power metal band
you can sing along to it.
It's in my range. And on top of that, his enunciation is so clear that you actually, I think you pick up the lyrics way quicker because you can actually understand what he's saying.
Yeah,
So I found myself singing along, and I was like, wow, I can actually sing this without going into a falsetto or just not being able to sing it at all.
Yeah,
Like,
you hit the nail on the head with both points. And it's that enunciation combined with the fact that it's in a lower register that just hits this out of the park for me. And then this particular track ends with this acoustic outro that they would kind of use at different points on the album as well. It's just a perfect song. And like, could easily be my song of the week. I'm not going to do that because it's almost too easy. But what a fantastic introduction to the band. And then you get into Hearsay in Disguise, which I can understand why Justin fell in love with this particular song. Another opening riff that's just absolutely fantastic. And this is the song that has the gallop. Like, this is the one where you can go ba-da-bum, ba-da-bum as you go through the song, and it's just so darn catchy. A little repetitive, but it's so good. And I said to myself, if another singer was singing this, would the song be as good? And I'm not sure that it would be, because it was like the perfect blend of the clean riffs with the clean vocals.
Darkness is falling as the Spirit of God slips away. You're a sinner by night and the holy saint by day. In the sacred corridors, evil is set free. Lurking among the shadows of the monastery. Heresy in disguise. Heresy in disguise.
so Justin kind of gave me a choice as to one or the other being his song of the week, but I think based on his intro comments, I think this should be Justin's song of the week. So I'm going to make an executive decision and make this Justin's song of the week.
Sounds good.
Justin Westmoreland, I should point out, not you. And this is another really strong song, and it just makes me wish, like, or wonder, why the hell was I not listening to the rest of this album when I got a hold of that one song?
Yeah,
It's like,
if you like the
you would-
one song, you would think that like you'd have to hear the rest of it. You want to hear more after that.
It was like right around the same time was when I got into Dragon Force, and I heard, I don't remember exactly the song. You can go back and listen to our episode about that album. But I like when I heard that one song, I was like, I got to go listen to this whole album. I don't know why those synapses didn't fire in my brain when I heard that Falconer song. Because around that time, I was probably a sophomore in college and or maybe towards the end of my freshman year. And I was just kind of like, I think I was still into metal, but I wasn't as into kind of getting into new bands. It was kind of just like, I'll wait for Ed Guy to release another album or Gamma Ray or whatever. There's just kind of like this lost era in my life that I bring up a lot on this podcast. And this just kind of happened. This one kind of fell right in the beginning of that era. It's just kind of funny reliving it. And like you said, like, this is, I think, the first time I think I can remember actually sitting down and listening to this album start to finish. Like, it's like I knew the songs separately, but not like in their proper order. And so it was cool to listen to it the way it was meant to be heard. And I also grabbed the I think it was the 2015 remaster from iTunes, just to kind of have like a cleaner experience. And I thought it sounded really good in my car. I don't know why. It sounded a little bit treble heavy on my computer, and it may just have to do with my speakers. And because I don't have a subwoofer or anything, so that could be part of it. But the
remaster,
you could tell the guitars are mixed a little bit higher than the rest of the music.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned Stefan earlier, who obviously wrote the music. He plays the guitars. He also plays the bass on the album. And the drummer is a guy by the name of Karsten Larson. 3 guys. That was it. This album was basically 3 guys with Stefan doing all the guitar parts, bass and the regular, electric and acoustic guitars. Really interesting. And I think that the 2015 mix helped quite a bit because that original mix is a little bit rough. Again, first album, not that it was meant to be a demo, but at the same time, you didn't really have some of the tricks that you have now. So I'm happy with the cleanup job. I think it was definitely better than the original sound on the album. But whenever it's a debut, you kind of get a little bit of a pass just because the budget may not quite be there. I have to say at this point, I think it's obviously 2 for 2 with two very good songs in a row. What are your thoughts on track 3, which is called Wings of Serenity?
Oh, this is another 3 for 3.
There you go.
Similar to Upon the Grave of Guilt, it opens up with like a quick little drum fill, and then it gets, and again, right into that another very memorable guitar riff. And again, this is another kind of a fast-paced one, like the first, probably about the same tempo as Upon the Grave of Guilt. But man, I had a hard time choosing a track of the week, and this was definitely one of the ones that was in contention for that. It's not going to be Upon the Grave of Guilt, even though that was like my first love with Falconer. And I'm giving Justin Westmoreland Heresy in Disguise. So let's see if we can each have our own track of the week. But this one's not going to be it for me, but it was definitely in contention.
Well, I'm gonna choose it as mine. I'll make it very simple. I love this song. I don't know that it stood out for me back in when I first heard the album, but this time around, going back to it, this was fantastic. The chorus is absolutely beautiful, and the riff that just kind of permeates the verses on this song is so good, and it's surprisingly heavy for a band that's like not that heavy. This song is pretty heavy. It stood out to me more than any other track this time around, and it was the first time on the entire album that they actually kind of employed layered vocals during the choruses, and I thought it was an awesome touch, just like having the layered effect of Matthias's vocals during the choruses. I just loved it. This will be my track of the week, so I get to hear it again if out of pure selfishness.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's just going to keep going because track 4 is Quest for the Crown, and this is my track of the week.
Nice, 3 in a row. I like it.
Yeah, I love. So it kind of starts out with this very medieval sounding, quiet intro, and then what do you know, a guitar riff, and here we go. And I kind of like the little bit of a folky element that this song has. I wouldn't go as far as call Falconer a folk metal band, but there definitely are folk influences in a lot of their stuff. And this, I think, you really get that kind of vibe, especially at the beginning of the song. But this just reminds me of like a good old fashioned drinking song where you just got your mug of ale and you just go swinging back and forth, and just another really great tune. It's like it makes me wish I could just go back in time and see this set again, because it was just I think that they had played at least 3 of these 4 songs we've talked about so far, and I'm pretty sure they played Mind Traveler as well. So
this song, I like it on the album. I love it live. I thought it was just an absolutely fantastic live tune, and it's funny because you talk about that, like the intro, to me it sounds like a Renaissance fair, and like it just it brings me like calling the minstrel, right? You got to get the minstrel in here for something. This is a really cheesy song, but it's definitely the folkiest of the song so far. But it tells me like it's almost like hearing a soundtrack to a story that you're reading. And ironically enough, this week I just finished a novel that I want to be clear. I read a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot of biographies, history books. I had actually just finished a novel for the first time in a while, just because it was never really my thing. But the name of the book was called The Name of the Wind, and the author was Patrick Rothfuss. It was a fantasy book, and it was on a list of like the 100 fantasy books you have to read before you die type of thing. And the book, based on, and I won't give anything away, it's the first in a series of books by this author. And it kind of had this whole feeling to it with like guys going to the inn and drinking at the bar and things like that. So this song was like the soundtrack for this book this week. And I love the book and I like this song just because I thought it really set the mood. And then, it's just one of those songs that like you can't help but smile when you listen to it. I think it's cheesy, but it's cheesy fun and I liked it.
Yeah, well, we all know I'm the master of ceremonies when it comes to cheese on this podcast. So.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Mind Traveler, the next track, is an interesting one. This, to me, if you listen to the intro, it almost sounds like it's going to be a melodic death metal song, and then it kind of goes in a bit of a different direction. This is a song that gets a lot of love by fans of the band. I am of the opinion that I think it's a little overrated. I think it's a good track. I can see why people like it. I don't know why some people think it's the best track on the album. I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with that. But it is interesting that there is like a subtle guitar solo in this track, which is something that's really not employed all that much. And the last round of vocals in the song actually reminds me a little bit of Sabotage, because they do it in the round style, almost like Chance, where you have the different layers of vocals coming in at different times. It's interesting. I'm not sure that it's my favorite track, but at least I'm happy that they tried something a little different on this one.
Yeah, this was another one that was in contention for me. I mean, almost every song was really in contention for Song of the Week. There really aren't any bad songs on this album. They're all pretty great. I like this one just because it kind of goes back to more of a mid-paced tempo, but then when it gets to the bridge and the chorus, it kind of speeds up again. But I think it's just another like awesome example of Matthias's just amazing vocals and I agree with you. Like there's a little bit more of an actual solo towards the middle of the song. Then it gets quiet and you just get to hear Matthias's vocals for a little while. Funny thing is that when I hear the beginning of this song, I think of Pelike and Tommy Johansson from Rainseed and Majestica and Sabaton, because they did this kind of goofy song called Nothing But Metal. They made an animated music video for it, and they basically just lifted the opening riff to the song and made it the opening riff to their song. Check it out. We'll post it this week. It's worth checking out. But they just kind of just didn't even think to come up with their own original riff. They just took the one from the Mind Traveler. And I just remember the first time I heard it, I'm like, why the hell do I recognize this this opening riff when I've never heard the song before, and that's why.
No need to reinvent the wheel, I guess. If go with what works. The next track, "Entering Eternity," is a little bit different because it almost reminds me of like a sped up Candlemass. It's got like Doom vibes in the beginning of this song, and then eventually, just Doom vibes with a little bit faster guitar work. This is one of the few tracks where the bass lines really popped out for me. I thought that the bass on this track is fantastic, and during the choruses, I thought the drumming was really fantastic. This is an underrated song and is another one of those like send me to the pub and pass me an ale type of things. This is like another drinking song, and I like the change of speeds. It's kind of sudden, but there are certain points in the song where it really, really speeds up, and you got the double bass drum kicking, and then all of a sudden it slows down again. This is probably a track that I would say is maybe the most underrated song on the album, and I say that because I don't remember this song at all. The first, like from going back 20 years, it was like listening to it for the first time, and I loved it. This could have easily been my track of the week.
Yeah, this and Substitutional World were, I think, the two songs that I didn't remember as well. But yeah, I agree. This is a good one. And again, it opens up with another really memorable guitar riff. And I agree with everything you said. I don't really have anything to add. You pretty much hit the nail on the head with this one.
It's funny. On the next track, Royal Galley, for some reason, I thought that the mix on this one song actually was better than the mix on all the others. Now, maybe I was just listening with a finer ear, or I had gotten kind of in sync with the way that this album was mixed, but I thought the mix on this song was fantastic. It sounded just a little bit fuller to me. This is, if it's not Entering Eternity, this would have been my second biggest surprise of the week. There is an epic chorus on this track combined with what I will only just say is like the best bridge on the album, which happens right before the instrumental section. I love it. This is a really tight song. I think it's also highly underrated. It's not one that people talk about all the time. It's one of the shortest, if not the second shortest track on the album. It's only about 4 minutes and change, but I love Royal Galley. The song is fantastic.
Yes, and the reason that Justin mentioned that this would be his other choice for his song of the week is because he actually went to the museum and saw the actual ship that the song is about. I think maybe we should have our friend Justin on the podcast to talk a little bit about. He probably knows more than the two of us combined about this band and this album, so might be interesting to hear his thoughts. But I thought that was really cool because he had actually gone to Sweden and spent some time with the band after their final live performance. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this song too. I remember they played it at Prague Power when we saw them, and another one of, I think, the more memorable songs, even though most of these songs are pretty memorable.
Yeah, I think it's, I think it's well placed on the album, in the middle of the album, and right before what I guess we would have to call the epic track on the album, a song that clocks in at under 8 minutes, which is, kind of long by power metal standards, I guess. And that's, the aforementioned Substitutional World. This song actually reminds me of, at least at the beginning, of like that classic 80s metal sound with like a Manowar or a Wasp or something something about that classic 80s metal sound with that opening riff, which I think is cool. But, and I say this with a big but, it has all the makings of something that I should otherwise.
Big butts, and I cannot
lie. This has all the makings of something that I should love. But for some reason, I really enjoy the verses. I think the chorus is a bit weak. I don't love this track, but there are parts of this track that I love. And specifically, there's a part where it's just Matthias singing over the piano, which he himself is playing, and I think it's fantastic. And that section makes me think, quite frankly, that this album needs a ballad. It never comes. There's no ballad on this album. I mean, I guess you can make an argument that there are parts of Quest for the Crown that are ballad-like, but for the most part, no ballad on this album, and that section of Substitutional World makes me kind of crave it all the more.
Yeah, unless you want to pick up like the special edition and listen to the bonus acoustic tracks, those
Right.
are kind of ballady. But yes, like the album proper doesn't really have one. And yeah, I mean, especially when you have this a singer of this ilk, like you kind of want to hear him be like the star, I guess. And this is really, I feel like this album is definitely more of a collaborative effort. It's not like it's not really anyone's show, I guess I would say. And it hit me today. I was sitting in my car at the car wash, very long. The sun came out for the first time since November here. So there was a lot of people waiting at the car wash. So I'm just sitting there. I think I heard this whole 7-8 minute song just waiting to get my car washed. And I was like, damn, like really just kind of sitting there and concentrating and actually getting to hear it. I was like, this is a really good tune. I liked it a lot. I like that the chorus is like, I feel like Stefan sings it, or it's not Stefan, Matthias sings it differently than I thought he would as far as where the notes are going to go. And so it kind of gives it a different flavor than the other tunes. So I found myself singing along to it. And again, something that I could understand and sing in my own range. It was kind of cool to be able to sing along and not sound like somebody who's strangling a cat, like when I try to sing Halloween songs.
It doesn't happen often, so enjoy it while it lasts. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Lord of the Blacksmiths. And I say that because I had a very interesting experience with this track. I'll get to it in a second. I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, it's good because like every now and again when I'm doing some iron work in the garage, I need a song to go with it. And I really hadn't found one up until this point. So now the horses' horseshoes are better than ever, I have to say. The horses are they just seem a lot happier. I'm just kidding. The song is great. It's another one that I don't remember being super familiar with. And I think some of the more epic tracks kind of, push this one off to the side, but this is another good tune. And again, like great riffs, great vocals. I have to say my anvil hasn't been used this much in years.
I have to be honest. I didn't remember this track. And as I'm listening to the song, as it gets into the first chorus, I said to myself, you know what this track needs? It needs that sound of like iron being forged on a flame. And sure enough, by the middle of the song, it actually starts happening. And I started laughing to myself because I said to myself, I just didn't remember that happening because I just didn't remember the song. But as I heard it, and as you start hearing that the sound of the hammer forging the sword, I guess, I couldn't believe that I was actually like hearing what I thought the song should have. It was like a surreal moment, and it is cheesy as hell, but it's a good song and I can't deny it. And it also reminded me of the book that I mentioned earlier. So everything seemed to come full circle with this one. It was just like, it was one of those experiences where I was like having deja vu, even though I didn't remember it at all. So kudos to them for Lord of the Blacksmith. And then we get to the last song before the bonus track, The Past Still Lives On. This is a really cool song. It's a bit weird. It's different. It starts with this really like cool like bass intro with the vocals on top of the bass. The chorus is so catchy and it's very simple, but so well done. This is a wildly underrated song, and I thought it was just a perfect way to end the album.
Same. I thought it was a little bit, the first couple listens, I thought it was a little bit like it was kind of ending a little, I guess, a little weakly compared to like some of the earlier songs, but the more I listened to it, the more I really liked it. And you're right, it does make for a really good last song. And again, it's another one of those kind of like, you know, at the inn, at the pub with your mug of ale, and you're just kind of like with your boys, like, you know, just, yeah, like that Lord of the Blacksmith really is the man. It's just, I don't know, like maybe I just like beer, but I mean, a lot of these songs are really good drinking songs, and this one is no exception.
Amen. The song ends with a bonus track, which I am not even going to try to mention the name of this song. But the long story short is, I guess it would be the one ballad on the album, although it's a kind of in a different vein. It's basically like a medieval Swedish song, and from what I understand, a lot of the a lot of the like Scandinavian countries have their own version of this song, whether it be the Danes, the Nords, the Finns. It's an interesting track. I don't have that much to say about it, other than it's kind of, because it's so different, it makes for a very good bonus track.
I'd love to see the Swedes come out for like the Olympics to this song for one of
There you
like
go.
the Swedish hockey team just skates out to the ice to this. I'll tell you a funny thing it reminded me of. When the female vocals kick in, it made me think of like a Middle Eastern band like Mirath or Orphanland. They're the kind of female vocals that you hear on their
Yes.
albums. It just kind of reminded me of that. It's kind of a neat track. Definitely worth checking out if you if it's not on your copy of the album. Fairly certain you can listen to the special edition on Spotify or iTunes or Apple Music or what have you. But it's kind of a cool little thing sung. I assume completely in Swedish, and it's I know there's a ton of songs in Falconer's future that are sung in this style. I'm trying to remember if they had like an entire album, or maybe it was like a bonus disc, maybe the Northwind bonus disc I'm thinking of, but you could tell that that Matthias enjoys singing in the native tongue, but this is kind of cool. And also, if you get that special edition, there's some cool acoustic versions of Royal Galley, Wings of Serenity, and Mind Traveler, as well as the 4 original demo tracks that came out the year before this album. So chock full of cool stuff if you get that that bonus edition, but it's probably available pretty much anywhere. But yeah, good stuff. Curious to hear what your rating would be overall for this.
Yeah, I'm so happy that Justin picked this. This served not only as a trip down memory lane with this album, but I am going to have to go back and listen to the rest of their stuff because I'm the first one to admit it. There's only a certain number of hours in the day, and I think I'm just, it's like you said earlier. After Matthias left the band after the next album, I just kind of stopped listening. And for some reason in the back of my head, I thought that he didn't rejoin the band until like the last album or two, but I was wrong. He was on a number of their albums because he would rejoin the band just, 4 or 5 years later and be on the rest of their albums. I have to go back and listen to this stuff. So if that's not a testament to what this week was, I don't know what is, other than I need to go back and listen to the rest of this stuff. This was an 8 for me. I don't know that it will ever be in the rarefied air of a Holy Land by Angra or Angel's Cry or something like that. I don't think I will ever gravitate towards it that much, but this is a really, really, really good album. I enjoy it more. I think it's more balanced than I ever thought it was back when I first heard it, even though I played it so much in 2001. It's an 8 for me. It's a really good album, and it's going to make me go back and force my hand to listen to all this other stuff now.
Yeah, I gave it a slightly higher rating. I'm going with an 8.5 on this one. It's really just kind of lacking the nostalgic element for me outside of the opening track. But there's always time. I'm going to be 40 soon, and hopefully I've only lived about half my life, so plenty of time to get nostalgic about the self-titled debut album by the great Falconer. And it's kind of a bummer that they kind of hung it up, but there is a lot of material, like you said, that I'm not familiar with either, especially the 2 albums that Matthias wasn't on, but also a good number of songs that he was a part of. I kind of got into, as far as new Falconer goes, it was really just the last 2 albums, Black Moon Rising and From a Dying Ember, which came out 2 years ago. But I mean, I really all these other albums in between, I don't know nearly as well as I should. Although I will mention that some of my all-time favorite power metal songs are on these albums, like The Clarion Call and Enter the Glade, and my all-time favorite Falconer song, Man of the Hour. There's just a ton of really good songs, but I think I had mentioned this when we talked about Pretty Maids. That's just, there's so much stuff I don't know, and I hopefully can make some time to familiarize myself. But I'll be honest with you, like this past week, I was finding myself trying to do a better job of keeping up with the current stuff, so that I'm not caught, with my pants down when the year end episode rolls around. So
that'll make hell of a Twitch stream if we do it that way with our pants down.
Yeah, we'll get removed by Twitch terms and services. But I've been listening to the new Battle Beast and Kissin' Dynamite, and which that album, it gets better every time I listen to it. And Nocturna and Will to Run and the Sonata Arctica acoustic album, and Persephone just released a new album yesterday that I have to listen to, and I got to listen to the Dawn of Solace album that you recommended. So it's so hard. Like you said, there's just not enough time in the day to listen to podcasts and listen to the new stuff and listen to the old stuff and listen to whatever we're talking about on the podcast, and just listen to whatever you feel like listening to. Like it's just the more the time goes on, the more music there is to listen to. So yeah, that rant aside, yes, there's always so much stuff that needs to be revisited, and this band is definitely reminding me of that fact. And because I did not go back and listen to more Pretty Maids, like I said I was going to when we talked about Pretty Maids. So
there you go. Listen, yeah. It's when we do episode, I guess it'll be episode, 942 in 20 years. I'll ask you your detailed thoughts on Grime versus Grandeur. You'll get back to me then. So something that'll be your homework for the next 20 years. A couple of news items before we listen to your, suggestion or your pick for next week's album. First off, John Zazula, co-founder of Megaforce Records, passed away after a long bout with cancer. Apparently, he's been fighting. He'd been ill for some time. You may remember Megaforce is releasing the first Metallica album, the first Anthrax album, amongst others. Sad news, but definitely a pioneer going back to the early '80s and that whole metal scene at the time. So our condolences to his family, and I believe a couple of news bits from the Prog Power world as we have some replacements that are on the way.
Yeah, bummed to hear, super bummed to hear that the Power Quest won't be playing this year, and Dream Evil. So Power Quest is now 1 for 3, and Dream Evil's 0 for 3 with Prog Power appearances.
Neither going to the All-Star game, I suppose, but
Yeah, so those two bands are out, and Artificial Language as well. So 3 out of the 4 bands that were going to play on the day 1 of the festival have dropped out for different reasons. But they have been the replacements have been announced, and Dream Evil is going to be replaced by Hypocrisy, who is a big mellow death metal band from Sweden. They'll be taking on that headline slot. Flotsam and Jetsam will be bringing their classic trash. I hope not. Thrash metal. This is going to be their Prog Power debut. They are going to be taking Power Quest place, and Artificial Language is being replaced by a French atmospheric prog rock band called Clone with a K. And the only band to remain on the lineup from the original is the progressive power metal band Mind Maze from the U.S. I'm friends with Jeff and Sarah, who are members of the band, and I know they both of them are super stoked to get to play at Prog Power because they've attended so many times as fans, and now they get to actually be on the stage. So they'll be opening up the show. So very different look for day 1 of Prog Power, but it looks like promoter Nathan Block got some pretty heavy hitting replacements to kind of keep things afloat for that first day.
I suspect next year will be a little bit easier in terms of planning and continuity.
Oh, God willing.
God willing is right. I am upset that I will not get to see Power Quest again, which I'm sure pales in comparison to your thoughts as the biggest fan in the entire world of the band. But I will say that having seen Flotsam and Jetsam live, they are good at what they do, and I am very much looking forward to Hypocrisy. I was a fan of their last album, and they are going to simply put, tear the place apart in Atlanta, and I look forward to that. I think that's going to be a really, really good show. They are touring, so this comes on the heels of their U.S. tour, but I actually have a conflict on their New York date. I will not be seeing them in New York, but I look forward to seeing them in Atlanta. So that's the changes there. I look forward to being at a live music festival in 4 months. So that will definitely be fun. And obviously we'll have much to celebrate with you as well. But before we get to Prog Power in June, we have a podcast to do next week. And I am waiting with bated breath to hear what it is I'll be listening to this week.
Well, I think you actually made it an easy choice for me because...
Are you picking Creator? Or are you stealing my thunder and picking the new Creator album?
Maybe once it comes out and I've heard it, we can reassess and have Mike Crea on to talk about his namesake Creator. But actually, I want to talk about A, recent album, and B, a band we haven't talked about yet. And that's Epica. And I want to talk about their latest release, Omega, because sure enough, you left them off of your top 50 list of the year, and then you had the gall to send me a playlist of the bands that just missed the cuts, which was another 12 or 13 bands, and they weren't on that either. So,
I did. And I caught...
according to you, the Omega album by Epica was not even in your top 65 or so albums of last year, and I want to know why.
I've received messages from people telling me essentially that I'm crazy because this album, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the fact that they thought I was crazy for not having this album in my top 50, my top 62, my top 68, whatever you want to call it. People make mistakes. I don't think I did, but I will give it a fair share. It's fair share. I will listen to this a half dozen times this week, and I won't have to go back too far in time to do it because I have familiarity with this album, but I'm going to give it my best shot. I'll even, just for you, listen to the bonus disc with the acapella version of Rivers and all that stuff. But I will focus on that first on that first disc. This is another meaty album. It's 71 minutes, but I will enjoy it for what it is because I happen to be a huge fan of the band. I am shocked that you are not picking an album deeper into their back catalog, but to 2021 we go, and back to Epica's Omega.
I will say that some of Brian's messages that he sent to us about how much he enjoyed it is kind of part of what put me over the edge on choosing this. So, shout out to Brian Clough for mentioning how much he liked it and kind of, cementing my choice. But to be honest, the band has been on my radar for months now to talk about. But I just always have such a hard time deciding which album because they're all so good that I just end up getting frustrated with trying to choose, and then I give up on the band altogether.
And so that's why I didn't have the album so high, because I love the band, but they're a victim of their own success, and every one of their albums is great, and this was not anything different. I don't know. Maybe I'll concede that I made a mistake. Maybe I'll cement my shoes into the ground and double down that this album was not that good. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where the wind takes me. But I look forward to listening to it. And then I will come back next week and torture you with some death metal. So it's all going to be good. We'll have it. We'll enjoy it. We'll enjoy the next 2 weeks. Thanks to everyone.
Just be careful because the Monkees have like 7 other albums that we haven't talked about. So.
But they're all 28 minutes, so I can get through them pretty quickly.
That's a good point.
Thanks to everyone for listening. We appreciate it. Keep in contact with us. Leave us a good review, if for no other reason than it helps other people to find the show. And we will catch back with you next week when we listen to Epica's newest album and do a deep dive into Omega. Chris, take it easy, bud. I will see you soon.
All right. Take care, buddy.